turned into a great dog. You'll see him again in another month. So, I wanted to do three things tonight. First of all, I wanted to take you guys through a brief general ledger summary. It's really just going to show you our assets and how they flowed over the last year, and our liabilities and how they flowed, and where we sit at right now with our reserve account balance. And then I'll take you through a budget summary the last 6 months. So it'll take you through the end of June this year. So a 6-month summary, show you what we budgeted, where we're at based on the budget, and then where we expect to be for the rest of the year. Then I want to do a brief summary of the reserve study. We talked about this last year. I put together a more detailed summary now, and it sort of explains from the from the reserve study that we had done last year, what we need to have balanced in reserve at the end of each year for the next 30 years. It gives you a little bit of insight into why we did the increase in our dues this year, that 1.3% I believe was, Rob? Yeah, 1.3% increase in our dues, and what we might consider for a dues increase in the following years, and why that is, what the justification behind that is, and where the math comes into that. If you guys have any questions, please ask me. Some things I will know right off. Other things I'll have to either ask Danielle to answer, or I'll have to go to our accountant. And I'll also have to talk to the auditor as well. First, I'll give you a quick summary of the audit. We're required to do an audit every year. 2014 was our first full year. We are in the process of auditing 2014 right now. I spoke with the auditor today. She expects to have a summary audit by mid-August, and hopefully a final and detailed audit by the end of the third quarter is what we're looking at. So she hasn't found any anomalies yet, but she wants to test some revenue. She needs to get some receipts and stuff like that. She wants to be able to test those and make sure that they're legitimate and track the money. So first of all, let's go through the, you'll have to excuse me, I don't see very well. We'll go through the general ledger summary. Now, the general ledger for this year is somewhat of a mess, and the reason for that is in 2014 is when we actually changed over with our new management team, and we changed over to the new HOA where we were actually a member HOA. So it started out with a balance of 0, and you can see that. In the first couple of months, we were still trying to get things organized, so the general ledger reports that we were getting from our accountant weren't all together. But by April, we came to where we actually had a general ledger that started to make sense. We started out with about $180,000 in assets and $180,000 in liability, and about $73,000 in our reserve account. And as we move through the years, you see that change. Now, I want to point out one anomaly that we discovered, and it took us a few months to correct. But if you look at those 3 months, you can see that our assets and liabilities jump up quadruple. They go from 182 up to 438,000. Now, I can guarantee you guys, we didn't just all of a sudden find $250,000 of assets and liabilities in 1 month. I don't think you guys remember paying that much, and I certainly didn't pay that much. That was an accounting error. The accounting system was actually quadruple charging the reserve account charges, and it actually went on for about 4 months before we could get it corrected. When we got it back down, we came back to where we were supposed to be. We had gained a bit of assets, $226,000, and we were still at $73,000 on our reserve account. The reason that we stayed at $73,000 on our reserve account is we really only fund that once a year. So you'll see that stay the same until the end of the year, and then it'll jump up at the end of the year. So you see, that's how that goes. We go through the end of the year. There is the end of 2014 reserve account, and then we funded it another $60,000, $63,000, and it's $136,000. And that's where we set right now as of the end of June, $136,000 in our reserve. We were targeted by the end of 2014, I believe we were targeted to have in our reserve account, beginning of the year 2015 was supposed to be $132,000, so we were a little ahead. We were at $136,000, so we're actually setting about $4,000 ahead of where our target was, but that's pretty close in my opinion. And we are targeted to be at the end of this year at $177,000, so we will put in another $40,000. We may end up being able to put in a little more than that, depending on where we're at with our balances at the end of the year, and I'll show you where that goes when I go through the budget summary. This is the budget summary, the 6-month budget. As you can see, it's a combined budget summary. Now, this is one of the reports you guys have access to and you can see online if you want. This is not a balance statement. This is not a profit and loss. This isn't a general ledger at all. You don't see debits and credits on this. This is an executive summary that I prepare every month from those reports for the board's purposes so that they can easily and quickly look and say, hey, this is where we're supposed to be on our revenues, are we there? And this is where we're supposed to be on our expenditures, are we there? So that's what this is an executive summary. You can see here combined, this is our annual budget, roughly $167,000 in operational income, $234,000 in total income that comes out of mostly our general assessment. Here's where we're at, and basically for the 6 months, that's an annual budget for 6 months. I just took it and divided by 6, or divided it in half. Or actually what I did is divide by 12 and multiply by 6. But for an annual budget, that's pretty much the only way you can do it. We don't spend money like that. For instance, our pool contract, we spend that all in a few months. But we annualize it just to be able to track it. That way it simplifies things. But you can see here for the 6 months, we're supposed to be at about $117,000 in general assessment revenues, and we're at about 118, up a little bit. That's just a difference in the assessment increase that we had because that wasn't in the original budget. We also didn't budget for any late fees, but any late fees people have to pay on their assessment that they haven't paid, that goes into there. A couple of small miscellaneous and builder assessments that we had to credit back. So we were supposed to be at 117 on revenues. We're at 119, a little over, about $2,100 over on our revenues for the year, or so far through the year, through 6 months. There's the expense accounts. There's a miscellaneous maintenance. These are all line items that we put in. Sometimes these don't get charged the way we'd like them to. When a receipt comes in, Danielle looks at it. She charges it to the best place she thinks it needs to go. Sometimes that doesn't happen the way we might like. For instance, you can see here that we budgeted through the year $5,300 for miscellaneous maintenance and repairs, but we've only spent $2,200, so we're $3,100 ahead on that account. But we budgeted $1,500 for pool maintenance and we spent $5,200. Well, some of that pool maintenance probably wasn't pool maintenance, but it got charged to the pool maintenance line item. So you can see that those two balance out. So those two in whole, we're pretty close on those accounts. Electrical repair, we budgeted $500 for that. Some of that's guesswork. Some of that stuff, it's a contingency budget. You have to budget for it so that you have a line item for it, but if it doesn't happen, you don't spend the money, you get to keep it. We're really close on electricity. I'm actually surprised. I'm almost thinking that's a mistake because that's one you could just never hit. We were at 15. We budgeted 15,000. We're at 15.1, so we're only about 179 over. Irrigation system, we budgeted $1,500 for repair of that. That's another one of those line items that probably should have got charged up here because we actually did do some irrigation repair this year, but that actually ended up getting charged in miscellaneous maintenance and repair. Let's see, the landscape contract and the landscape supplies, those usually are, sometimes the supplies get charged to the contract and the contract gets charged to the supplies, but the two in general are pretty close. You can see they pretty much offset each other. The pool contract, we're a little under on the pool contract, but we still got some time to go, and as I said, the pool contract is one that isn't an annual expenditure, but I just annualized it for that purpose. And the only other line item I see here is pool supplies. We under budgeted for that. We're only at $750. We budgeted $750. We spent $1,200, but that $1,500 is for the entire year. We probably aren't going to spend a whole lot on pool supplies in October, November, and December. So by the end of the year, we'll probably be pretty close on that. So all in all, on our expenditures, our expenses, we're at $60,000, or we were supposed to be at $60,900 or $61,000, and we're right at $60,000. So we're only about $1,000 off overall for the expenses. Now those are just expenses. We also want to look at the administrative expenses as well. And these are pretty straightforward. Accounting expense, that will be spent when we get the audit. The audit is going to cost us, well, we actually agreed to $1,200. It may be a little more expensive because she's had to do some extra work because of that confusion about transfer at the beginning of the year. The auditor's really been good to work with us on that. That's really why the audit's taken so long. But we've got $1,500. That'll be spent whenever the audit's complete. Insurance expense, we're a little bit behind on insurance. I don't know why that is, unless we just haven't gotten the bills in on insurance. Maybe we get those in quarterly, but generally our insurance runs about that for a year. So we'll see where we're at the end of the year. We'll keep an eye on that. Legal expense, that's another one of those contingencies expenses. You don't know what you're going to spend. You just got to put it in the budget. We budget $2,500 through the year. We've only got 53 or 530. Right on management fees. Of course, we ought to be right on management fees. We know exactly what those cost us. Thanks to Danielle. Miscellaneous administrative expense. You can see here we're at 375, or we were supposed to be at 375. We just didn't budget a lot for that, but we've got a lot. That was an oversight on our part because we spent a lot on flyers and communications. I assume that's most of what that expense is in there, Danielle, and we hadn't anticipated that. I will correct that. The next treasurer, whoever that happens to be, will correct that in the next year's budget. So that will get corrected. Now, we've offset that, and the board does this. The board looks at this every month and says, listen, we're a little over on that account. Where can we make that up? And where we've made that up is we actually budgeted $8,000 for social, and we just haven't spent that this year. We probably need to have a pool party, that type of thing, but we haven't. And what we've tried to do is save a little money on the social side of it so that we could make up for that over expenditure on our administrative expense. Most of the other line items are pretty straightforward. The only one I'm curious about is this taxes. I think we have overpaid our taxes. We're going to check into that. That's not the case, Danielle?
No, the short version is that in last year, Lancaster County now charges for equipment as well as the property taxes. Okay. So they tax you on the pool building itself and the equipment inside of it.
That's nice of the county. I appreciate that. Well, we missed that because last year our taxes were $600, and that's what we budgeted this year. But they changed their tax laws. So next year we're going to have to budget $1,300 for our taxes. Our taxes are going to go up $700. Thank your county for that. Bad debt expense. We have to budget some of that. What bad debt is that's if a homeowner or a town homeowner owes the HOA money from their debt or from their fees. They don't pay that. Of course, we have an option to go after that. But if they declare bankruptcy, just like any other debtor, we get in line. And if you get 50% of what they owe you, then you got to write the rest of it off. We've already shown that that's a credit up top. We've already taken credit for that revenue, but we haven't received it in the general ledger. So we've got to show it. It's got to balance out. So it's got to show up as bad debt expense. So that's what we budgeted for. You can see on normal, we're supposed to be at $22,000 on administrative expenses. We're actually way behind, about $6,000 behind from these couple of accounts up here. We'll see where we're at the end of the year. But overall, we're about $6,600 ahead, or we haven't spent $6,600 of the expenses that we should have spent. What that means is, we go back to the top, is this line here, which is provision for reserves. That's not what's in reserve. That's just, that line item balances everything out. So that says, this is what your total revenues were, this is what your total expenses are. What's the difference between those two? That's what, if we wanted to zero out our cash accounts and put all of our money in our reserve right now, that we could do that with that. We have $42,000 in there right now. We'll see what that is at the end of the year, and then we'll decide how much we want to roll into reserves or how much we want to leave in cash for some expenditures. For instance, some of the damages to the townhomes that we wanted to do for the storm, if those aren't covered by insurance. Something happens to the pool, the landscape. If we budget $2,500 for the landscape and somebody rips it up where it completely goes bad and we have to replace it, we have a little money left in there. So we play around with that. The reserve account does earn interest, but it doesn't earn a lot of interest. We don't want to put everything in reserves because it is a little more difficult to pull money out of reserves. You have to go through a couple of hoops to get the money out of reserve. So that's where we're at on the budget. I do want to take you guys through the reserve study very quickly, but I think it's a good idea to stop here and see if you guys have any questions about the budget, where we're at, where we're going with it. Yes, sir?
Just out of curiosity, what makes up the electrical expense?
Make up the electrical expense? All of our electricity, the street lights, anything we do at the pool house, anything the pool runs on, that type of thing.
And one other question?
Yes, sir?
I guess that's an independent auditor?
Pardon me?
The auditor, that's an independent auditor?
That's correct, yes, sir. Room full of silence. You guys are just like church. Okay, very quickly, I'm going to take you through the reserve study. And really what I'm just going to take you through is the first few line items. Basically, the reserve study was done, and what we did is we had an expert come in and look at the community and say, based on other communities, based on comps that I've done, based on the amount of common area you have, the pool that you're carrying, and then the townhomes, because the townhomes, we're responsible, the HOA is responsible for the exterior of the townhomes, the parking lot at the townhomes, the shingles, all that type of thing. The HOA is responsible for those on the townhomes. So they came in and looked at these and said, okay, this is what we think you're going to have to spend over the next 30 years out of your reserve account in order to keep up all that common area and all the responsibilities of the HOA. So we think you need to have this balance in your account every year. You're going to be spending this much in your account, and you need to have this much in the balance to be able to cover those. So we had that done last year, and the result of that is this N number over here, which says that's our target at the beginning. This is 2015. I apologize for the fact this isn't big enough to be able to see everything, but 2015, 2016 below it. By the end of, or at the beginning of 2015, we should have had $132,344 in reserve. We actually had 136. By the end of this year, we should have 177. We've already got 40. We'll see where we're at the end of the year, but we should have enough to fund our reserves at the end of the year. That's why we did what we did with our fees, and that's why we manage the budget, so that we can fund our reserve at the end of the year. That's the principal responsibility, two principal responsibilities of the treasurer. One is to make sure that we don't overspend our budget, and two is to make sure that we properly fund our reserve. I don't think there's anything else that's a responsibility. Treasurer does some other things, but those are the two things you really got to pay attention to. But you can see that goes up over the years, and by 30 years from now, we're supposed to have $833,000 in our reserve account. Now, the expenditures for reserves come over here. You can see we should have spent $10,250 for the townhomes. I think that had to do with replacing some fences and shingles, that type of thing. We still may end up funding that out of reserves, or we may fund that out of our general account. We haven't really decided on that yet, because we do have some maintenance we're doing on the townhomes. The next couple of years, we really aren't. In this year, which is 2017, we're supposed to spend $40,000. I could take you to the general reserve and tell you what that's supposed to be. But yeah, there it is right there. The $40,000 that we're going to spend is walls, trim, or paint, that type of thing. So the reserve study did detail out to us what we were supposed to spend that money. We may or may not spend that. If we don't spend that money and we think we don't need to, then we still fund the reserve, but then we don't have to do anything with our due structure. But the reason we did the dues the way they are, is I took what we needed in our balance at the end of the year for each one of the reserves. I took an estimate of our budget, and I took the fees that we were charging at any given time, what those were for the single-family homes, what those are for the townhomes. I assumed an annual cost of living for our budget. So I'm assuming about 1.5%. Now, quite frankly, cost of living usually runs higher than that. It usually runs somewhere between 2 and 4%, depending on whether you take into account fuel costs or the economists will tell you a bunch of things about cost of living expense. But you've seen it on the news what cost of living is. 1.5% is a little conservative, but considering what our budget is based around, it isn't based around buying food. It isn't based around putting gas in our cars. It isn't based around those types of things. It's basically based around pretty predictable consumables, electricity, that type of thing. So I think 1.5% is probably a pretty good cost of living to adjust that by. So what that 1.5% does, it just increases our expenditure every year by 1.5% for this planning purpose. And then I assumed a 1% interest on any balance we have in the reserve, so we get to show that as income. And then I basically played with the annual assessment increase until I got to a number where we were supposed to have 833, or we're supposed to have 808,000. We ended up with 833, and we're really, really close. I'm sorry. Yeah, we're really, really close on what our balance is supposed to be at the end of the 30 years. So that's the justification for that fee increase. Now, what we'll do at the end of this year is we'll look and see this is how much we have to put in reserves. We'll fund reserves. We'll see if that reserve funding is ahead or behind where it should be. So we'll see if it's ahead or behind the 177. If it's ahead, and we can get through the next year with the budget that we put together, and be able to fund out of that budget $232,000. So if we can put another $45,000 into reserves next year without increasing fees, then we won't increase fees. It's as simple as that. If we look at our budget, at the end of the year, that budget says we get to fund our reserves, then we don't have to increase fees. If we look at our budget, we have two options. We can either cut the budget, and we do as good a job as we can. You can see there's not a lot of fat in our budget. But we can either cut the budget, or we have to consider increasing fees, and that's the justification for the increase in fees. So that is the reserve study. That is the end of my summary. Any questions about the reserve? Any questions about any of the finances that I can answer? Sir?
Does the reserve study take into account the 4,000 or so that we budget yearly for maintenance?
It does not. No, that general maintenance is for things like irrigation system. If somebody runs over a curb, one of the trucks runs over the curb and crush our curbs, something like that, we have to do something with the stop sign or something like that. It does not. That 4,000 is maintenance. Now, to be honest with you, most of that 4,000 will either get spent on something in the townhomes, like fixing a outdoor plumbing problem, or fixing a tree, or it'll get spent at the pool. Because the pool, listen, the pool's great. Everybody, I know the pool adds value to our community and people use it. I see it all the time. But the pool ain't cheap. We have to spend money to keep it up, and we got to spend money to use it. I think it's worthwhile spent. That's why we have so much money in our account or in our budget for pool expenditures. But that's the nature of the pool. It does cost a little money for us to have it. So. Anybody? Yes, ma'am.
Just because I'm in a single family home, can you tell me what a monthly HOA cost is for the townhomes?
The townhomes,
Versus
how much they pay?
How much they pay versus what
Yes, ma'am.
Homeowners pay?
Right now, the single family home pays $142.60 every quarter, so we pay that 4 times a year. The townhomes pay $132.85 every month. So that total, we pay $570 a year in the single family homes. The townhomes pay $1,594. So they pay about 3 times what we pay. Is there a question up here?
Yeah. Do we have the budget breakup? There are few items which we see common across townhomes, single family, everybody uses that, example pool. But at the same time, do we have some kind of a vision on, how the townhomes, the HOA that we are getting from the townhomes is spent?
How much money is spent?
Yeah,
now,
do we have that breakup?
For instance, all the money that we take in goes into one account. So I can't tell you the townhomes pay this and that money gets spent over here. So all the money we take in goes in one big pot. But there is a general ledger that we get every month. That's available online, Danielle?
I don't produce the online document.
Okay. We can make that available. We haven't done that in the past, but I can make the general ledger to where you can see every line item, every expenditure, and whether it was done by the townhome or whether it was done by the single family home. Sure. And I can show you an example of that report. There's the June financials. There's the general ledger summary that I summarized for you. But here's the line item. This is for the single family homes. I think I can get a pair of glasses later. And I believe this is for the townhome here. So it says current period townhomes. So these are all the expenditures, the actual expenditures for the year in this column right here. Those are all the expenditures and the line items that were spent on. So that's kind of a line item summary. If you want to see detailed receipts, then you have to look at the general ledger. I would recommend, unless you're really, really interested, don't dig through that general ledger. It's a pain. It is not fun.
I think, I'm not on it, but I think if I'm not mistaken, those documents that you're looking at there are on Nextdoor.
Okay, so they are on Nextdoor. And the name of that's the income and expense statement is what that is. And it'll be, I think it's all in there in a PDF. So every month our financials gets published to Nextdoor in a PDF format that you can bring up and look at. Take a look at those summaries if you want to. Whoever your treasurer is, I encourage you, if you have questions next time, ask the treasurer. They'll answer them, or they'll find somebody who can, or they should. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Sid, are we responsible for the roads or sidewalks?
We are responsible, I believe, for the roads and sidewalks in some section of the townhomes, or not?
Yes, yeah, in the town area, basically Cameronton from the street to the edge of the townhomes, and then all of the parking lots,
Right.
the sidewalks throughout the neighborhood.
Yes.
The roads are all county.
Yeah, the sidewalks throughout the neighborhood are ours. The roads are all county, thank goodness, because we wouldn't want to have to pay those. There's a question up here?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there gonna be any point, I don't live in numbers world with you, I'm sorry, so this might sound
okay.
dumb, but is there some point in this reserve fund world where we can start to upgrade our neighborhood a little bit, start to get some more amenities maybe?
There is not anything in the reserve fund or anything in the reserve study that was done to say, hey, we want to build a playground. So if we want to do that, then a board, whoever's on the board, needs to find out what that needs to be, and we need to plan for that. And you have a couple ways to do that. You can either plan for it 5 years out and gradually increase your fees to pay for that, but you got to get everybody to agree to that, which is, listen, we all love our neighbors, but we all know we don't agree with our neighbors all the time. And what is it Abraham Lincoln said? You can get some of the people who like you all the time and all the people who like you sometime, but you can't get all the people who like you all the time. Good luck getting everybody to agree on that, or 60% or whatever it takes. But anyway, there is nothing in the reserve plan to upgrade the community, to add a playground or to add a basketball court. That would have to be done out of either a special assessment or a reallocation of funds, or the group, the membership as a whole would have to vote on it and decide how they want to do it. Now, we could pull money out of reserves to do that. It's our money. But we got to vote to do that. Everybody's got to do that. Anybody else? Sir?
Hey, question. So the that plan for the 30-year reserve fund, is that like by law or just a choice because of the auditor's study? Or?
It was required. I believe we were required to do a reserve study in our rules, and we did that.
Let me
Go ahead.
this, you know, we're not required to do the reserve study, but it was the best practices to do a reserve study. We're required to do the audit. The reserve study, there's a couple different things that can happen with the reserve study. We can choose to underfund the reserves. We could just say, hey, it's somebody else's problem in the future, let's all live the high life. And we can keep the dues as low as possible. And then 25 years from now, whenever it is that the townhome roofs need replaced, for instance, then we send everybody, well, first, the joke of it is the way our bylaws are set up, we have to get everybody together to agree to a special assessment. So then we all get together, and of course, nobody wants to pay for that. There's only 64 townhomes, so they can't muster up enough votes to outrun the rest of the 231 single-family homes. So they can't get it passed, so the roofs fall off and blow away, and we end up in this problem. So we can actually underfund, or we can overfund the reserves, which is where we just, you know, crush it with a lot of money, and we don't put any money into our yearly expenses. You know, just do the bare minimum, don't do social events, that kind of thing. Or we can do what we're trying to do, which is set it up so that the future, because the problem we run into is each board can do what they want, and we're trying to set it up on this nice precedent where everybody kind of expects to see the money in there and expects to see it growing in a certain way. Same thing we all do with our budget. Some of us are saving for our next car. Some of us are going to panic and go pay 25%. Some of us are going to look for a deal. So it's kind of the same exact thing.
The board felt it was the most prudent thing to do to have the reserve study, and then once we got the reserve study, we kind of took the middle of the road. What Rob said, we didn't want to underfund. We didn't want to try to overfund. We wanted to try to meet the obligations that we're going to have, or that we plan to have with the reserves.
I heard the similar neighborhoods, our dues are still pretty cheap. If you've looked around, our dues are pretty good.
And a lot of times, you know, specifically too, and like Eric was just saying a second ago, compared to some neighborhoods, our dues are pretty good. Other neighborhoods, I mean, we can find examples on both ends of the spectrum. The big thing is, and I get a lot of that, where somebody will come to me and they'll say, you know, hey Rob, we're paying this much money and all we've got is a small, you know, junior Olympic pool. We don't have a playground. So they'll name off our few amenities. Usually they forget about our lights and our sidewalks and the things we plan for and all that. And they'll say, you know, my son, daughter, neighbor, friend lives in this community that has 6 pools, 17 slides, you know, round-the-clock lifeguards, lights, you know, the whole shebang, and they do it for 50%. Why don't we? A lot of what you got to look at that goes into this, that makes it kind of interesting enough to get involved in this stuff, is we have 231 single-family homes, 64 townhomes. like Sydney was saying, everybody pays in the same money. The townhomes pay more per month, but it's because they pay in and then we take their chunk out for the general budget that we all pay. They pay basically with the single family homes. That's what we slice off. And then the rest of it is for them. So when you go in and you look, you have to look at how many homes does that comparable neighborhood have. Do they have 1,000 homes in their neighborhood and 2 swimming pools? It's kind of easier to pay for things. Do they have sidewalks in their neighborhood? If you drive around and look at some of the other neighborhoods, that was one of the reasons we liked Dom and Glen was the sidewalks. Some communities don't have sidewalks, so they don't have to budget for future sidewalk repairs.
Which isn't cheap.
You're right. Street lights, do they have the same kind of street lights? Do they not have them? You know, things like that. So you've really got to look at the overall when you're trying to compare. And it's very difficult to find, you know, just like if you're trying to put your house up for sale, finding that exact comparison is really difficult. Even if you can go and look at another Lennar home that looks just like yours, you're going to run into the problem of it's not in your neighborhood, it's not in your area. You know, we can go down to the south side of Rock Hill where I work, and you can buy our exact homes that were built by Eastwood for about $150,000. And there's not too many people in here paid $150,000 for your home. So comparisons are always going to get in the way, if that makes sense.
Any other budget questions? I'm getting while the getting's good. Thank you all for your time and attention. I appreciate it.
I kind of reverse things. Not bad. That's the most we'll get out of it. I kind of reverse things a little bit. I was going to tell you about some of the things going on in the community. I'm going to make sure my phone's turned off right here. I stood at the back listening, and I think everybody can hear. So if you can't hear, I'll go back to the microphone, but it is better not to have to deal with it. So I kind of reverse things. We talked about the budget first. Now I'm going to tell you about a little bit of the things that are going on in the community, kind of the direction that we've set things up. I can't predict how the next board's going to do things because every meeting, you know, and you have to understand, I'm the president of the association, but we don't always do what Rob wants. There's a lot of times I get outvoted, and then I stand up here and I tell you guys about the great thing we did, and I'm not necessarily in agreement with it. But that's the way the board's kind of worked, is in a unified group. We argue with each other in the meetings, and then we're unified. So some of the things that we're going to do differently in the future are kind of the precedent we've set, and that's the best I can tell you for now. First and foremost, biggest accomplishment we got this year was getting the pool open. That doesn't mean it's running the way we want it. It doesn't mean that it is the way we want it. There's more chairs are needed up there. We know that. The pergola is gone from up there, and there was a lot of people who wanted the pergola. So we actually set that up. We've got that planned for right now. And if everything goes well, please, please, please understand. If everything goes well, we'll get that pergola back up in the next few weeks, hopefully. We've got it set up. One of the guys from our neighborhood, his company is Docs Plus. He has offered to donate the resources to get it done, the actual man hours and the labor to get that done. And I'll probably make sure that there's a little sign on it or something, and he'll be featured prominently as your deck builder of choice for the neighborhood. Please consider him, that kind of thing, because he didn't ask for that at all. He just said, hey, Rob, if you want to put that pergola back up, I can give you some guys to get it done. So I don't know what a pergola normally costs. Somebody in here said they were looking at having a little overhang built. Was it, Angela, did you say you talked to somebody about that?
Yes.
What was the cost for the overhang? $35,000. Cost of materials for the pergola is about $2,500, so that's what we're looking at right now. So that's going to be a huge win for the neighborhood, because that's the biggest reason that we didn't get the pergola back, is that was the big, of the almost $280,000 to fix that pool. That was the sticking point in the negotiations. They were like, well, we're not putting the pergola back. And I went, oh, okay. So we gave on that. So we'll get the pergola back, hopefully. For the people who like it, it'll be there. If you don't like it, it's not going to cost us $35,000 or $20,000 or whatever it was it would have cost us. So we'd also like to see some changes in the future. I know this board has talked about changes to the operational status. Everybody would like longer hours. We can't go late into the night because we don't have the lighting for it. You have to have a certain number of lumens per square foot and all this stuff. I don't even know how they would read it, but we're not gonna be able to open the pool late at night. But we could try to open it a little bit earlier in the morning. In order to do that, we have to agree as a board on how we're going to do the manning at the pool as far as the staffing. Are we going to have no lifeguards, nobody at all at the pool? It's probably not a good idea. Somebody walks in, drops a beer, glass shatters everywhere. That's $3,000 and a couple weeks down when we drain the pool, sweep it, refill the pool. So probably have to look at future things. I know if I was on the board, my vote would probably be to move to more of just somebody who mans the gate, sweeps up, checks the bathrooms, cleans them, because I don't want to clean bathrooms. Unless somebody wants to get on the bathroom cleaning rotation, which I haven't had anybody volunteer yet. So So we'll probably look at the operational status going in the future. I know no matter who it is that's on the board, I'm sure next year they'll look at a better way to work the status as far as the opening and closing times. More chairs, we already ordered. I actually just kind of surprised. I took a little bit of leeway with what the president could get away with and just went ahead and ordered a couple tables and some chairs, hoping that the board wouldn't get mad. Worst case scenario, they just fire me as the president. So I was willing to go ahead and take the risk, and I ordered us tables and chairs. Unfortunately, the build time, because of course our tables and chairs are a special table and chair that are, the pattern and everything is custom. So the build time plus the fact that it was the summertime by the time I thought to order them, and quite frankly, I just didn't think of it. Nobody did. Was about 2 months or so. So they're supposed to be done sometime here in July. Hopefully that's going to happen. We'll get 2 more tables up there, total of 8 more chairs, I think it is. We've got a couple chairs need replaced up there. We did some upgrades as far as the pool house itself. We got it repainted. That was just a lucky break. I happened to meet a guy when we were trying to buy some little houses for my wife, for these little decorative homes. And he was a painter and got a deal on that. So I think it was roughly $1,800, I think is what I got what the pool house painted for. And he actually made a mistake, but he owned up to it. He painted the wrong color. For what we did is we said 2 coats. We wanted primer on the outside, then we wanted a tinted primer, and then for the second coat we wanted paint. And for anybody who paints houses or whoever's painted anything, that's a good plan. Well, he screwed up and he painted the wrong color. He just messed up. He did the entire house in a coat of primer in the wrong color. Then he went to get the paint, realized what he had messed up, and it was going to take 2 coats now to cover up the primer. So he did that at no extra cost. So we actually got a coat of primer and then 2 coats of paint on it, and it looks great. Hopefully everybody's like that. The interiors of the bathrooms are painted because they looked ugly. We thought it would look a little nicer. My wife picked the colors for those. And then we went inside and we decorated it up. We grabbed some little decorations and kind of made it a little nicer. So anybody who's gone to the pool, hopefully that's just made it feel a little nicer, and you feel like you're getting a little more value. What else did we do? We took care of some basic repairs with the landscaping. And the landscaping is not where we want it. It's nowhere near where we want it, and we're looking at ways that we could increase the landscaping further. One of the things that we're looking at is nobody's really pleased with the landscaper that we're using, which is US Lawns. And I don't want you to think for a minute that a single board member has screamed and yelled, we need to keep US Lawns. Nobody's really happy with them. Danielle has, which by the way, I apologize, I didn't introduce Danielle in the beginning. For anybody who doesn't know Danielle Rudisil is our manager. She stays in the back of the room, not only to greet you, but also to remind you that she's not in charge of anything. Because a lot of times people get confused by that. So, you know, we can tell Danielle to leave if we want. We can make her come back a couple times. It'd be fun if you guys want to do that. She's kind of our HOA puppet. You know, I call her my paid friend because if I'm off the board, she's not going to be my friend anymore. That's just the way it goes. So, but Danielle got involved with the landscaper in that she tried to kind of pick up some of the communication, because when I get tired of dealing with somebody, I just go ahead and shift it over to the management company, which is part of their role. That's actually something that they will do by contract. They'll deal with all of them. But I feel like we get better services if they have to deal with somebody in the neighborhood, because when I see there's a problem, I can call them directly myself and say, hey, there's a problem, fix this. And it just cuts out the middleman. Danielle got involved so that we could kind of add a little extra punch. Now I've got somebody who's getting paid to irritate these people, and still we're not getting the services we expect from US Lawns. So US Lawns is probably short-lived. Next board could come in and they may all love US Lawns. But one of the things that this board put in place that will hopefully be carried over by the next board is we decided to create, and we jokingly called it the Landscape Czar, and they didn't even want me to throw Landscape Czar out there, but is that we're going to create somebody who's going to kind of be the chairman of a committee that's specifically dedicated to landscaping. And for now, we've just appointed one person, or we've asked one person, and she said that she'll do it. And it's Bridget Desiree who's here. Bridget, if you wouldn't mind standing up, sorry, I'm going to kind of surprise you there. But anybody that doesn't know Bridget, she served on our board the first year, and served as our treasurer, actually, a role that she did not want and was not prepared for, and she took it anyways and sucked it up. And she's had a lot of good suggestions for the landscaping. Her yard always looks beautiful. So when the board was looking for somebody to kind of step into that role, we thought that'd be perfect. Now the next board could come in and be really mean and tell Bridget she can't run the landscaping. It's up to you guys, but I wouldn't do that. And the nice thing about that kind of alleviates some of the, not only something that's on me, but it's taking it away from the management company, so we don't have to worry about somebody who doesn't live in our neighborhood trying to figure out what we want as far as our plants. And it honestly gives it to somebody who has a passion for it and the right knowledge for it. which is, we kind of try to figure out who will fit and put them in a position. So Bridget will have all the power that the board wants to give her. Our suggestion to next year's board is that she be basically given an outline of a budget, an outline of some expectations, and then if she runs with it and makes everything beautiful, she reports back to the board, here's the changes I'm making, here's what I'm doing, this is where we are. And if the board likes it, they keep it going. If they don't like it, they fire her and put somebody else in the position. The good side of that is it'll be a little unprecedented. In the past, when we've had some committees set up, people didn't have really the leeway that some of us felt like they should have. I know that, for instance, at one point, Virginia, who served as our vice president this year, she served as the lead or the chairman for the social committee. And the social committee was really restricted. They had to kind of fall by some mean times to get anything approved, and that just took too long. And it's not the way anybody wants to operate. So hopefully this next board will give her the leeway that we've suggested. Here's your budget, here's our expectations, make things look beautiful and you won't have anything. And then people will know where to go. Yes, ma'am.
Question, will Bridget, the landscape czar, be over?
I like that you call her that already.
Will she be over just the common areas? Will she take part in the homeowners and making sure that?
As far as the beautification of people's homes,
yes,
that still falls to the architectural committee.
Okay.
And there's reasons for that, but we've also got kind of a thought process for that. So I'm glad you bring that up because that'll give you a segue in a moment where I can slide over from there. Right now, what we're looking for her duties would be the common areas. And the common areas also include the townhome areas. So we would kind of just umbrella everything. Now that's going to be left up to her as far as how much does she want help with on that. If she wants to be the landscape czar all by herself over there, she can do it all by herself. And I'm going to get you a plaque that says that now. If she decides, you know what, I could use some help on this, then what we'll do is these little postcards that we've been sending out, hopefully people will like those because you don't have to open them or anything. You just pick it up, read it, and go, okay, it means something to me or doesn't. And they're cheaper. This is why we like those. Danielle came up cheaper. Not that much, but a little bit.
money.
But we'll send out some notices to everybody saying, hey, we're looking for some people who are interested in helping out with landscaping projects and figuring out what we're going to do. So that'll just be her purview as to what she wants to do with it. And part of that would be that hopefully when she doesn't want to do it anymore, somebody sees that as something they want to get involved in. If you have some ownership of something, it makes it better. The architectural committee, depending on what happens with Shanda tonight, who's served as our, Shanda, go ahead and stand up. Shanda has served as our architectural committee chair for the last 2 years. They've been restricted at times in that, for the most part, what they've been doing is, if there's something that I couldn't automatically approve because they've approved things already, for instance, you want to put a fence in and you want to go on the little diagonal line in your backyard that stays behind your house, I can approve that in a few seconds. I can't approve unusual things that people want done, so that's when I turn to the architectural committee. And they've gone out very quietly, looked at things, made decisions, and then come back to us. They've also kind of pointed out things when they noticed problems throughout the neighborhood. Architectural enforcement is probably the least focused upon part of the neighborhood. And I'm not going to lie, that's kind of by design. We did that intentionally in the beginning, and a lot of that was me, quite honestly. We were trying to get so many things under control in the neighborhood. Back in 2013, our budget was a total mess because the builder just had not done, they just didn't do anything. They didn't do their due diligence. They did a horrible job. We had issues with the management company we were trying to work through. We knew the pool was a problem coming in. So we had all these different things happening, and the last thing that we wanted to do at that point was just tick people off with a bunch of letters saying mow your grass. And also we were getting letters sent out all the time for no reason. They were just wasting our money. So we kind of laxed up on those rules and regulations. Now with the rules and regulations book that we put out this year, that was supposed to be kind of the first salvo of, hey, okay, we've got time to focus on, are you mowing your grass? Are you pressure washing your home? Are you taking care of your landscaping? Hey, great, you wanted to put a flower box out front. Did you put flowers in it? Are the flowers dead? Those kind of things. And as annoying as those are, they really do. Not only are they a part of our job as the board to be a part of and pay attention to, but that's part of living in an HOA. Everybody knows that if you move into an HOA, you're going to have to listen to people tell you how to make your yard look nice. So that's a lot of what the HOA board has to do. Now, we don't have to be ridiculously aggressive about it and go after people all the time, but we do have to maintain things. So we've tried to get involved with that a little more. And the architectural committee will probably change in the way it looks after tonight. And then we'll change I would hope the next board would kind of change their involvement a little bit. Their design now under this board, and the way we've set things up is that Danielle or her assistant or somebody from her office comes to our neighborhood and looks for violations. She's not the bad guy though. She takes it from there and she gives a list to the board, which the board then can give to the architectural committee. The architectural committee can then go out, look around the neighborhood and say, okay, yeah, that does look bad. So we get a little bit of ownership from the neighborhood. So once again, it also alleviates it. Don't be mad at Danielle if you get a notice that says you need to pressure wash your home because it was also looked at by somebody from your neighborhood. And there's a group, and they haven't had a chance to do it yet, so don't be mad at them.
And I also say don't be mad at me because we are a committee of
Right.
5.
There's 5 on your committee. So
Plenty of anger to go around.
spread it out. Worst case scenario, the board can only say no to it.
And I even got a violation myself. So.
So that's part of what the architectural committee will do. The pool is going to also need a committee of some sort going into next year. It would be great to have a group of people who use that pool a whole lot, who want to kind of get involved with figuring out the operation hours, figuring out where we're going to spend the money on that, looking at whether or not the pool needs repairs or anything around the pool house or anything. Hopefully the pool doesn't need any repairs. I don't hear anything about the pool being broken, that's for sure. And then the new chairs, that kind of stuff. So hopefully going into next year, the next board will do that. Yes, sir.
Rob, question on the pool. I know the signs all over the place, no glass bottles and all that stuff. But there are people that are sitting there, their feet in the pool, standing in the pool drinking, whether it's out of can, soda, or whatever.
Right.
Is that permitted?
Drinking alcohol at the pool, yes.
It's not, it could
You
be
mean in the
alcohol.
pool?
They're standing in the pool and there's the can on the edge of the pool.
Right now, yes, it's permitted because nobody said they can't. There's no rule that says you can't. It's and that's one of those things that the next committee coming in may say, you know, there's a lot of people who are in the pool, like he's saying, and they're drinking, and I'm worried they're going to spill something in the pool and that's going to make a mess. And they can talk with the pool company and make decisions based upon their knowledge, experience, whether or not they want to make that a rule, and then tell the board, and then we can just add that as a rule. That's one of the reasons we passed that rules and regulations book out. It's also in a digital format, and we can upgrade it and change it and send out new ones if we need to in the future. Hopefully we don't need to do that like every 6 months because it's expensive, but we do have that ability to just email blast those as well. So we get the pool thing in place. Question, I'm being signaled about the playground. You mentioned that. So the playground's come up, and I know a question was asked about upgrading amenities and things like that in the neighborhood. Right now we don't have, because there's 2 ways to answer this. Do we have the money to spend on a playground? Sure. If we want to just suck it right out of reserves and just, you know, do that route. Now we're going to have to make it up someplace. So can we spend the money to build a playground today? Yeah, we could, in the same way that you go out and buy a new car today if you wanted to, just drain your bank account out a little bit. So most people aren't going to do that in their own homes, so I doubt they want the board to do that, so that's what we stuck away from. What we did was, at the beginning of 2013 really, when the playground first came up, I started asking the board if I could have a playground committee, a group specifically designated to go and research the playground. Now our first playground committee chairman was, what was John's? John Penry. And John since moved out of the neighborhood, but John about 6 months into it, built a playground in his backyard, so that was kind of a clue to me. So we kind of backed off. But their job basically in the playground committee was to start looking into what was it going to cost, could we build it, where would it fit, how can we do it, that sort of thing. Eventually, Virginia ended up picking that up. Once she came on the board, she took that on as her main task last year, and she's researched it, and they've gone out and they found an amount that they think it would cost. This is what we want to build, and then as recently as the last board meeting, she presented, here's a playground, here's the options to be on it, here's how much that playground would cost, and here's where we want to build it, which was just to the left of the pool if you're facing it, with a lower fence around it. So the kids wouldn't just run out into the street. So that was what she presented. We looked at the insurance costs. Would the insurance go up? Which the answer is the insurance doesn't go up because our liability doesn't change. You can drown in the pool or you can die on a playground. That's the liability. And that's just the easiest way to put it. I'm blunt if anybody hasn't figured it out. So you can, and that's the reality of it. You can get injured anywhere, so our liability doesn't go up. We still carry the same kind of insurance. But the goal was to find out what's it really going to cost for a playground. Also, how long is it going to last? 15 years. That's the answer. So we know every 15 years we have to replace the playground. So, okay, we got to budget how much money every year to cover that. So that's going to increase our reserves a little bit. So we went through that whole process. It was put to a vote at the board at the last meeting The question was simply, if we had the money to build a playground, can we build a playground? And we voted yes. So, yes, if we come up with the money, the board has agreed that a playground can be built. Now, the next problem is to find the money, like Sydney was saying. Been a couple different suggestions put out there for how we would raise the money for that. They're going to look into that some more, and hopefully over this next year, at least somebody who's on the board will carry that forward. But we've kept the steps moving forward on that, and there's just nothing's an overnight thing. That's the hard thing. I mean, it's hard to get a light bulb changed overnight when you're in an HOA. I tried to make that as easy as possible, but there's always going to be problems that you're going to run into. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I wanted to mention tonight. In general, we've just tried to make things better. The goal is that every year, the next board that comes on doesn't understand why the board before complained so much. This is so easy, you know, and hopefully what will happen is at the 5-year mark, because we took over in 2013, so when we're 5 years in, I hope that the 5th board that walks in the door, sits down, looks through the budget, sets up a budget that basically worked the last few years. I mean, this is our first year where we've actually had a fully functioning operational pool neighborhood. Everything's exactly the way it will be before we've had to guess what our budget's going to look like. This is the first year where we're actually getting the real numbers. So 5 years in, I hope that board walks in and just thinks we were silly for ever acting like it was hard. This is so simple. We just vote on whether or not people's grass are too high. That's not been the case for the last 2 years. So it'll be a little bit easier this year for this next board, no matter what. And that's what we've tried to do. Are there any questions about general board votes, pool rules? I know people have asked about the pool rules multiple times. Is there anybody who's curious about things? Yes.
I'm curious as to where do we stand right now on the irrigation system? Is it all fixed? Is part of it fixed? What's the status? Is U.S. Lawns fixing it?
Right now, the irrigation system is working. As of yesterday.
The whole thing?
The whole thing, from what I understand. If a zone went out last night, don't be mad at me. But now, one thing that's not working right, though, is the timing. I don't think the timing's right. And unfortunately, that's because we're using U.S. Lawns. And again, I've already said I'm not happy with U.S. Lawns. So I think if we had somebody else in there, another company, which that'll fall to Bridget, assuming the next board gives her the authority that we've set up for, Bridget could fire U.S. Lawns next week and bring in a new company. We have, I believe, as many as 7 different bids from different landscaping companies already in place. Some of those are older bids, so they'd have to be tweaked a little bit, I'm sure. But there's room to begin that process of replacing them and hopefully get it going. But as of right now, the landscaping system should be operational. Irrigation, what did I say? Landscaping. Yeah. Close.
Both.
Yes, ma'am.
Talking about landscaping, at the entrances, when there's a big conversation on Nextdoor about, oh, the landscaping is horrible and everything's dead. And
yes.
So things were replanted, but the bush that's behind the rock, they're dead.
Yeah, those are the azaleas that they killed. They pulled the azaleas up. This is amazing. This is how U.S. Lawns' brains work. They came in and I said, put rocks in place so people will stop driving over our flower beds, which all of a sudden people learn to drive. Rocks worked. It was my idea. I'm going to take credit. So the rocks worked. People stopped driving. Well, the U.S. Lawns came in and I said, listen, I text messaged the guy who's in charge, Rick, and I said, make sure that you're going to move those plants. And he said, you're right. And he moved them. They tore them out of the ground and they threw them away. So they threw away perfectly good azaleas. So I called and I complained when I got back and I realized what had happened because I was on vacation. And they came through and they replanted new azaleas, no cost to us. Unfortunately, those azaleas are brand new and the heat killed them. So now we're in this conundrum with U.S. Lawns. Will U.S. Lawns fix our azaleas this fall if they're not our company? Probably not. So we've got junipers that died that need to be replaced because they died because of the heat. And they should have as good a warranty as Lowe's does. My wife went back to Lowe's and had some flowers replaced. She doesn't like when I point her out over here.
I do the same thing anyway.
But yeah.
Whenever I find that plant.
Exactly. If you plant, if you don't know, anybody who doesn't know, here's a tip for you. You go to Lowe's, you buy a plant, you put the plant in the ground, the plant dies 6 months later, take the plant back to them with the receipt, they replace it. That's their policy, up to a year. Yeah. Everybody's all of a sudden like, wait a minute, I gotta return something. And if you use your My Lowe's card, it's on file as far as your receipt. So. Yes,
was the irrigation system working when we had all those junipers planted in the front?
The irrigation system was working.
Them, it looked great, and then they all started dying.
Yeah. The irrigation system was working, but the irrigation does not extend up to those junipers. The joke of that being The junipers don't need it. If you go down Regent Parkway, all those junipers on the left, not a single one of them has an irrigation system to them. They just, unfortunately, we got hit with 100 and some degree temperatures way earlier than we expected this year, which I'm wondering if it's going to translate to snow this winter.
Almost any bush you plant in the first year has to be watered through the first year. After that, it's on its own. But that first year, it needs watered, and there's just no way to get those junipers watered, and it got hot.
They were supposed to come through, what we expected to happen was to come through and like hand water them, basically water trucks hit them. And unfortunately it just got so hot so fast it didn't get set up and it killed them off. But again, they're still gonna fall under a warranty. Good luck, Bridget, how you handle that. So, but no matter what, in the fall those junipers will be replaced, whether it comes from her budget or where it comes from. Other questions about general pool, general town hall?
Good question. Most of the lifeguards that we have, they're high schoolers. In fact, one of them's a student of mine at Indiana High School. So when we have adults who refuse to get out of the pool during safety break, etc., what are these high school kids supposed to do? And how is that whole thing supposed to be handled? I mean, my wife and I both witnessed it a couple times in the past couple of weeks, and just trying to figure out.
Have they shot anybody yet?
There's no violence so far, and so let me answer the first part of the question, which is usually, that's why I kept saying the pool is like somebody will ask the question, or I'll just throw it out there. Why do we have a safety break? Why is it not an adult swim? Why don't we have an age regulation at the pool? Why? So here's the answer to it. Lawsuits. I stuck something up in the little bulletin board up there to kind of give some people an opportunity to read it. Basically, there's been a couple lawsuits. Fair Housing Act falls into place, and we fall under Fair Housing Act because we have a pool that is owned by our community. Yeah, it's your pool, I get it, but it's not your backyard pool. So that's the rule to it, and I've already had that one come up to me. So we have to have rules and regulations at our pool because we fall under a public pool. Because we're under Fair Housing Act, if we set an age regulation up there, if we say 6-year-olds cannot come in the pool, and I'm going to pick a really young age so that everybody can hear. Is there anybody here that thinks a 6-year-old should be able to swim in a pool by themselves? Nobody will judge you. We're just going to judge you. Nobody? Okay. All right. So bad mom wants to send her pool or her kid up to the pool to swim in the pool. The child's 6 years old, all by themselves. There's no lifeguards. It's just one of those key gate things that you use to scan and you go through the gate. Child goes into the pool, and we've got a rule up that says you can't be up there if you're under the age of, let's say, 7. So we pick that nice young age, so nobody can get offended, hopefully. So that's our cutoff. Mom decides that she's mad about that because that's her babysitting for the day. She's going to let her kid go up there and swim for a couple hours in the kiddie pool because she'll just tell her child to stay in the kiddie pool, and I've got a good kid. Okay, is that believable? I'm a police officer, it's believable, trust me. My child wouldn't go in the big pool. I told my child to stay in the kiddie pool. You're discriminating against my child because of their age. That's a real lawsuit. That's a winnable lawsuit. And our lawyer said if you do it, you're in trouble. You're going to be in trouble
by insurance.
Because it's age discrimination. It's absolutely, and to pick something that'll just be visceral with people and really hit you hard in case you're not getting it. If I put a sign up at the front that said no African Americans in the pool, same exact thing. It's the same thing, guys. It falls under the same guidelines. So hopefully I should get a few people to go, oh my word, that's what the age thing is. And that's the way we have to look at it as board members. The other part of that is they found that if you choose to put that age restriction in place as a board, you're in violation, like I said, of Fair Housing Act. For anybody, I forgot to say what Fair FHA is. Fair Housing Act. So you're in violation of Fair Housing Act. You are responsible as a board, not only as a board, but as personal individuals, and you can be fined and you can also receive community service. I love you guys to death, but I'm not going to go and explain to my job down in Rock Hill, going to see the chief of police and say, hey chief, I got to do community service next week because I got fined under Federal Housing Act laws. I'm probably going to lose my job, so I can't do that. The other side of it being that our insurance company has said you have no protections under insurance if you're sued for a purpose like this where you intentionally defied what your lawyer said. So we have no insurance and we have no legal protections whatsoever. It's called an easy win, and here's the kicker to it. Sydney and Trey and whoever on the board, they all, myself, we vote to put the rules in place anyways. We get sued, we lose, the community gets a $50,000 settlement. They take $50,000 out of the pot. If I was one of you, I'd turn around and sue the board individually and get your money back because you're going to have to write the checks. So that's where we are. It's stupid. We don't agree with it. There's nobody on the board who thinks that it's okay that a 6-year-old can go swim in the pool. How does that equate to your question about the safety breaks? So we can't have an adult swim because that's age discrimination. So we can't tell everybody to get out of the pool for 10 minutes so that we can let the adults swim, because then we're in the age discrimination thing. It's either everybody gets out of the pool or everybody stays in the pool. Why do we not let everybody just stay in the pool? Why the heck do we even have lifeguards then? If we're going to have lifeguards, might as well have them all the time. Do we have to have lifeguards? No. We did get that changed. A couple of guys helped us out. I apologize, I can't remember who was involved in the actual figuring that out, but we figured out that the pool did not need to have lifeguards, got the pool reclassified. The problem we ran into was nobody wanted to be the first board to vote the lifeguards out, because what if somebody drowned? The chances of somebody drowning are extremely slim, but when you're the guy raising your hand to say no lifeguards, it's really hard. That may change going into next year. I know, like I've already said it myself, my vote for next year would be to move to more of an attendant. And why do I think we need an attendant up there at all? Which attendant would get rid of the safety breaks, by the way. All it would do is the attendant opens up the gate, lets people in, sits there, checks people to make sure that they actually belong there. A monitored gate system would be nice, but you still could have somebody who holds the gate open.
So the safety breaks are so the lifeguard can rest.
Yes, safety breaks so the lifeguard can rest. Thank you. Clarify in case I get too far off tangent, because I'm trying to think of how we can go with it. So the safety breaks basically, because a 15-year-old, like you said, what's the attention span? It's as long as your butt can handle, right? For teaching, right? That's what it's supposed to be. If you're lucky, we take their cell phones away. So yeah, 45 minutes is kind of the teaching standard. So 50 minutes, they're supposed to blow the whistle. Everybody's supposed to get out of the pool. At that point, they can rest their brains, go play with their phones off to the side someplace, check the bathrooms, check the temperature, or check the chemicals in the pool, that kind of thing, and then come back over and start back up for another 50 minutes. The hottest part of the year, we've got extra people in there in case the pool fills up. So we can have at least 25, or at least one lifeguard per 25. If we went to an attendant, they wouldn't do any of that stuff. They'd check the chemicals, they'd check the bathrooms, they would make sure that things are the way they're supposed to be, sweep up the trash around the area, make sure there's not ants taking over because people's chips are left everywhere, put the chairs back at night, all the things that you and I don't want to do. They would do all that. It should be cheaper. We should be able to have longer hours at least. So I think that's kind of the direction I'd like to see the board go. We'll see how it goes next year. Did I answer all of the question and everything around it, or did I answer none of the questions? Anybody?
The original question was, what's the lifeguard supposed to do if they have an adult that won't listen?
I missed that part of it. Thank you.
I guess just the process and the policy, what are they supposed to do?
So here's what, man, this is a hard one. I'm trying to think of how I want to answer that question.
Are they accountable to you, or are they accountable to their company?
They're accountable to the company, and then the company is obviously accountable to the board, and as the president, I'm going to handle day-to-day operations, or Danielle will get the call. What should have happened in the most recent one, and I actually spoke with the homeowner about that one, if you refuse to get out of the pool in the safety break, what should happen is two things should happen. One, the lifeguard should get back in the stand and tell you, oh, that's fine, I can't have my break then. And if you're the heel who wants to stay in the pool, make that kid stay on the stand, that's up to you. As soon as we can get a relief out there for them, or somebody can make a call for them or something like that, at that point, another lifeguard should come out and try to help cover that time, and we'll pay more money for the extra lifeguard so that we can we can cancel all the safety breaks. So we'll actually increase our spending at that point. And then we would go to the board. Now we've got to make the tough decision. Do we call the sheriff's office? What do we do if somebody stays in the pool and the sheriff's office gets there? Do we send divers in to get them out? Guys, this is the kind of questions I have to deal with on a daily basis as a cop. You get there and I'm like, get out of the center of the pool, and the guy's like, no. Can't tase him, he's in the water. Well, on the flip side, maybe I should alleviate that one. If I tase you in the pool, nobody else gets electrocuted. So I can tase you, but I mean, it becomes a very difficult question. I mean, eventually, I guess we got to drain the pool and drag the guy out or something.
How many people do you know that get a 10-minute break every hour they work?
That's what I run into all the time. I'm like, how many people? But then again, and I had somebody say it, the flip side of it, though, like he said, 15-year-olds sitting there staring at a pool for an hour. When there's multiple. And that goes back to how do we like the way the pool can run.
I get out of pool for 10 minutes. It's not worth it. Pissing a little kid off, but it seems fair.
for every hour there has to be.
Well, and what it goes back to is the way that company is set up to run their lifeguards. So if we change the lifeguards and change the way we're running things, we can change the way that operates up there. So again, like I said in the very beginning, the pool is open, it's not running the way we want the pool to run. So changes will have to happen in the future is the way we go with it. For right now, we have water to swim in, which is better than we had last year. So. Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Did I hear you say that when there's two, there shouldn't be a safety brake?
I don't think there should be. Now, currently the way that company's policy is and the way our contract reads, they get a 10-minute break every 50 minutes. So technically they're able to get around it. I'm not pleased with that. I think if there's two lifeguards up there, one can be on the stand for a half hour and then the other one can be on the stand for a half hour.
Yeah, two different, because you need 10
Right.
minute breaks.
Right.
The second one usually sits at the table. And
Right.
plays
Taking
on the
a
phone or
20 to
whatever.
30 minute break. I got an email that says all that stuff in it, where I griped and complained about the exact same stuff. So again, we go back to are we happy with the way it's being run right now? No. Do we want to see it change in the future? Yes, absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Are we down to one guard on the weeknights, is that right?
For the most part, we go to one guard at the times that we expect to be the lowest. I mean, one of the things that we did is we added in on Sunday mornings, the pool opens up at the same time that it originally was going to open at noon. There were people that said, hey, the pool should open up at the same time every day. So we got that done, but we did that by taking money from that pool budget. We'd already spent the money. So we took and added some money in there, and that basically dropped it down to, like you said, weeknights, a lot of times we're going to have one guard. Honestly, the way the pool's been with the attendance, which is the whole purpose of that little sign-in log, was just to see how many people are kind of using the pool to match up with the count that they do. Because again, I'm relying on 15-year-olds to count heads in the pool and then go write it down. It's kind of just be able to read through and see, okay, the same people are up here all the time. And I ask the people who I see on the list all the time, hey, how's the pool running? Plus, the people that are on there are the people I would recommend putting on that pool committee because they're there all the time. But we are looking at that as far as how many people are there and everything.
Are we supposed to sign in when we go to the pool?
There's no rule that says you got to sign in. It's almost kind of a social experiment to see how many people would. If you sign in every time you walk in, you're a conformist. If you didn't, you're not. Yes, sir.
Not to be a town deal, but if you have an email going to the pool company, we were there this afternoon, during the safety breaks, the chemicals were not checked.
I appreciate that. Did you email anybody on the board?
No.
Because the company will ignore your
Popped in
email.
our head while we were talking.
I appreciate it. No, I'm glad you let me know that because that's how we get chemical errors that come up, and they're easily explained with heat and stuff like that. But obviously, seeing that nobody's checking the chemicals is a better way to do it for us. And that's part of the pool committee thing. I don't know how to check the chemicals right now because I haven't gone up there and asked them, show me how to do that and everything. I want to know. I want to know how to go up there anytime I want, pick up the thing, go over and test the chemicals. And if we had a pool committee, those people would say, hey, do that every once in a while. See if what they're putting down in the sheet is actually what we're getting. That's all I have.
Do you know when we're going to get around to voting? I need to leave shortly, and I would like to vote.
Yes, ma'am. We'll get that. We'll get that in the next few seconds here. Anything else? General questions? Well, you killed all the questions right there. Good job. Thank you. All right. I'll get muddled in my brain and I'll forget who this year's nominees are. First of all, again, thank you everybody who came tonight. Thank you everybody who brought proxies, that kind of thing. That helps us out quite a bit. Do we have a quorum tonight? I want to establish that we do have a quorum. Danielle's able to give us the yes. Since we don't have a secretary here tonight. This year's nominees, the people who've asked, and it's basically these people have all said, yes, I'll do it already, or have come and sought out a nomination. Myself, Virginia Pugh, Shanda Swartz, Virginia I pointed to earlier, Cindy McIntyre, Dina Erickson. I want to throw this out for Dina. She lives in the townhomes, which is one of the reasons we were really excited that she was willing to run. Unfortunately, Dina is in the process of moving from New York, and just so happens the date we picked is the day that she's moving. So she is doing everything she could to be here today, but it wasn't worth telling her to kill herself literally getting here from New York. Dina brings experience from the townhomes. She brings her knowledge base of what it's like to live over there. She's owned her townhome over there for about 1.5 years, and in that time she's rented it and lived in it. So she's gone back and forth. She'll now be living there full time, and a townhome perspective would be nice. She said that if she does not get nominated or does not get voted in, she's still going to be active with the townhomes. She's willing to give input because right now we kind of guess a lot of times when it comes to the townhomes, which can be difficult when we don't live there. So that's something to consider with Dina. She lives in the townhomes. Kim Hansen, Kim emailed earlier. Kim was unable to make it. Saw a lot of heads pop up, satire people. He writes with satire. Kim's a good guy. He's a computer engineer. He's the only guy who brought me beer one day when I said, hey, I don't have any beer. So he's a nice guy. If you need beer, send Kim a message and apparently he'll show up.
What's his email?
Yeah. But Kim is a good guy. I know he comes off rough sometimes on there, but that's his sense of humor. If you take it from the perspective of he's writing the email, or he's writing his messages from the point of view of a guy who's just complaining about everything just the way sometimes it seems like is happening on there, that's Kim. And anybody knows him knows he's a really good guy. Don Gorey is also here tonight. He's over there. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask everybody to come up and kind of introduce themselves to you, tell you a little bit about themselves, and then we'll get to a quick vote. Is there anybody, before I do that, here tonight who wants to either stand up and ask to be nominated, or anybody who wants to stand up and nominate somebody before we move forward? Yes, sir.
I don't want to do that, but I just want to clarify, are we voting for a specific position, or are we voting for 5 people?
It's a good question. You will vote for 5 board members tonight, and we'll explain I'll go ahead and explain the ballots now so you can start moving forward with the ballot as you're listening to people. You'll vote for 5 board members tonight. Those board members will serve a 1-year term starting tonight and ending sometime in July, so it's usually short or long by a few days. Those 5 board members will then choose the officer positions. We have 4 officers we currently assign: the president, the vice president, the secretary, and the treasurer. Those officers run the organization day to day. Any extra board members we have, which in this case we have 1 extra board member, serves as just a member at large. They're a board member, but they just don't fulfill an officer position. There are conditions within our bylaws that allow us to assign some people to serve 2 roles as an officer. There are also positions, or there is an opportunity for us to go outside of the board to fill roles. For instance, if nobody on the board wanted to be the treasurer, absolutely no, we just could not get anybody to do it, we are allowed to go to somebody else in the community and say, will you serve as an officer, will you serve as a treasurer? They won't be a board member. The board members vote on how things will be run, and then from there the officers run things. You have the ability on your sheet to check up to 5 people. You can vote for 1 person if you want. You can vote for 5 people if you want. You cannot give 1 person 5 votes, though. Thank you, I appreciate it. Does that make sense to everybody? Is there anybody who's confused at all about that? If you get confused or you're not sure, as you go back, just ask Danielle. She'll make sure you're on track with it. But essentially, you're going to either check 1 name or 5 names, and we'll go from there. If you have proxies, you'll be able to vote for additional persons beyond that. Any questions about the ballot system at all? With that, then, I'll go ahead and ask Don Gorey. Don, if you want to come on up.
Going from the bottom up, I guess. Huh?
We'll go from the bottom up. Don, you get to tell a little bit about yourself. Good for
me. Don Gorey. We moved into the neighborhood a little over a year ago. We were literally the last house. So I started getting involved with the HOA around the end of last year, just trying to get curious. We said we'd never live in an HOA. Apparently I sort of enjoy it. Background, we came from Connecticut. I'm an engineer for a Fortune 50 company, currently working in supplier compliance. So we have about 6,000 suppliers. I manage all the processes and basically process improvement, both in efficiency and cost. I think this flies in here. I think that's a trait that would be very good with the board, as Rob said. Each board's going to get a little bit easier, because the board's going to realize what we need to do and how to move forward. So I just think with my background in process improvement, I think I'd be a good addition to that. I'll keep it short and sweet because I know people want to go.
You guys all know me. I'm interested in staying on the board if I could get your vote. I principally am interested, like she says, I live in the numbers. I'd like to continue to be the treasurer. I'd like to continue to bring that budget forward and help manage the reserve accounts and that type of thing. I enjoy working on the board. I'd like to use the rest of my time to tell you guys about Rob. You guys don't know how much work this guy does. He's running again. If you're smart, you'll vote for him. He makes everybody else's job on the board easy. I know some folks get mad at him for things because he's the guy that has to take the heat for that kind of stuff. But you don't realize how much work he gets done for us. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hey guys, I'm Shanda Schwartz. I've lived in the neighborhood for about 2.5 years. I've been on the architectural review committee for the past 2 years. So ever since the board took over, I've been the chairperson on that. Like I said, it is a committee. There's 5 of us. We do vote. I did get a violation, like I said, this past time around. My water hose was not rolled up perfectly, so I went to Lowe's and bought a $15 little thing, screwed it on the wall. Now it's nice and pretty. As far as previous experience, we lived in Hickory before moving down here, and I was a member of the Hickory JCs, which is the junior chamber. I was on the board there. It's kind of a giant version of HOA because it's a city organization, whereas this is a homeowners organization. We did a lot of the very same things. We had the president, the vice president, the treasurer. I was a member on the board. I was actually a member at large, so I kind of helped multiple roles, and also was involved in a lot of event planning. That's pretty much it. I've got a lot of experience doing this kind of thing, so vote for me.
Hey everybody, I'm Virginia Pugh. I served as your vice president of Homeowner Association this year, and I just want to, first of all, I want to say, Trey, I'm going to miss you. And I'm going to miss if I'm not voted in, which I'm asking for your vote. The reason why I'm asking for your vote because I did start the playground, pick up the pieces of the playground, and I don't have a fight in the playground because I have an 18-year-old. That's it. And I think that our community has too many kids and not enough amenities. And so this year, I accomplished what I wanted to. We got to vote for the playground. We will be moving forward. If whoever's on the board, I will be ecstatic to help them move forward with this. Fundraising, some things, try to get some money raised, try within the next year or so to get this thing built and have some accomplishments. And I would like to say on that note, I enjoyed working with Sydney and I enjoyed working with Rob, and I really enjoyed this group to work with because like I said, I'm with Cindy. There's a lot that was done. I supported Rob, sometimes I didn't support Rob, but one thing I can say, and I don't think anybody here can say that we don't have a great neighborhood, and we haven't had, these last 2 years, we've had some great homeowner association people, and Rob has worked his behind off, and I appreciate it. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the board that I've served on, and I'm just asking for another term to make this neighborhood continue to make the wheels turn in this neighborhood.
I get to be the last guy to go. I appreciate the 2 years that everybody has given me on the board. I'm going to ask for at least another year. My wife was not excited when I first told her that I wanted to continue to do this, but she got behind me, as you can see tonight. My wife's here to support me, and that's really the only thing I have, is that my wife and daughter are still supporting me, and I appreciate everybody who's thanked me and everybody who's come to me and said, you know, this is the kind of things we want. This next year, if you put me on the board, a couple things I'd like to see improved are just the communication that we put out to the neighborhood. I'd like to see those documents that are currently on Nextdoor moved over to our website. I think we've got the board going future, as we've lost a couple members, so I think we'll be able to change up the way we're doing that. I'd like to see more information put out more readily, and I'd like to see, hopefully we can find a way to entice people to come out to more of the board meetings themselves, which would probably include changing the way the board actually structures the meetings and puts that information out. So a communication improvement is all. We've been striving every year to kind of do something with that. I don't know the perfect answer, but we'll work on it. You go ahead and make your votes at this time, and then you can circulate back to Danielle with those votes. You gonna come around?
I'll come around.
She said she'll come around. She'll come around so you get your information. right, I have the ballots and everything's counted up. I won't delay it all night long. Dina Erickson from the townhomes, Cindy McIntyre, Shanda Swartz, Virginia Pugh, and myself will be this next year's board. Kim Hansen and Don is here still. Don, knowing that I'm on the board now, I hope that you'll stay involved with us. And thank you everybody who came out and voted tonight and everything. We're going to make sure to keep Don involved because there's a lot of really good experience there, and I talking with him, I figured that out. So thank you for everybody who came out tonight. This is your opportunity before you take off. If you want to grab one of those board members and start bending their ear about things you'd like to see done differently, Danielle has some business cards in the back if you'd like to get her contact information. Everything that goes through Danielle eventually makes it to the board, hopefully very quickly, but sometimes it gets a little delayed. If there's anything you want to talk to us about, we still have to decide about the positions of the different officers. Dina's not here, so we can't really do that tonight, or else I'd go ahead and knock that out real fast. But for now, those are your board members, and thank you again for everybody that came out tonight. Is there anybody that has anything else before we officially say we're done? Nothing? All right, we'll call it adjourned then. Thank you guys for coming.